Okay, so picture this. You've spent weeks, maybe months, setting up the perfect role-playing campaign. The world is gritty, the stakes are sky high, you're ready for some serious, edge-of-your-seat drama. And then, a player shows up with a character that just doesn't fit. We've all been there, right? That moment when the whole tone of the game feels like it's screeching to a halt.
Maybe it's, I don't know, a talking goose who's also a bard.
Or maybe it's a goblin whose entire deal is just pratfalls and slapstick comedy.
Or, and this is a personal favorite, the barbarian grandpa, who just cannot resist turning every dramatic moment into his own personal stand-up routine. All of a sudden, that serious, epic game you had planned feels a whole lot more chaotic.
And listen, it turns out this isn't just some weird thing that happens at your table. If you've ever felt that kind of tension, you are so far from being alone. In a recent poll, a massive chunk of players and dungeon masters said this exact thing has caused real problems in their games. So today, we're going to break down why this happens and, way more importantly, how to fix it without just ruining somebody's fun.
So what's really going on here? You know, it's so easy to just point a finger at the character, call them the problem. But the real issue? It's usually something much deeper. It's a communication gap that starts way before anyone even rolls a die. And this slide right here, it reframes the whole thing perfectly. We jump to labeling it a problem character, right? But what it really is a tone disagreement. It's not about a bad character idea. It's about a fundamental clash in what everyone expects the game to feel like.
And that clash happens because, well, tone is invisible. You can't see it. A player can't just read your campaign notes and magically absorb the exact vibe you're going for. They only know the tone that you actually bring to the table. I mean, if you say the game is a dark political thriller, but every single person they meet is some goofy cartoon, players are going to pick up on that and think the tone is a lot more flexible than you intended.
So it's really crucial to understand why a player might bring a funny character to a serious game. And spoiler alert, it's almost never because they want to wreck your game. Sometimes it's just their way of lowering the pressure in a really intense story. Other times they honestly just read the room differently. And yeah, sure, sometimes it's about grabbing the spotlight with a joke, but at the end of the day, it's just their way of trying to have fun. Now look, a little bit of tonal difference, that's not the end of the world. But there is a line. There's a very real breaking point where that simple difference in style stops being funny and starts becoming a real problem for the entire group. The source material actually has a name for this, the tipping point. And that's when the jokes start to actively break the game for everybody else. It shatters immersion, it totally undermines any emotional investment people have in the story, and it just flat out gets in the way of other players' enjoyment. You know, like that heartbreaking character death scene that keeps getting interrupted by one-liners? That's the tipping point.
And that's exactly what it feels like, isn't it? It's like half the table is playing a gritty drama, and the other half thinks they're in a completely different slapstick comedy. And that's usually the moment when the DM starts to quietly panic.
But panicking and just shutting the player down is not the answer. The core idea, the whole philosophy, is right here. Tone alignment isn't about removing fun, it's about synchronizing expectations. See, it's not about punishment, it's about getting everybody swimming in the same direction.
All right, so let's get practical. How do we actually fix this without a big argument? Let's open up the toolkit.
This is the big question, right? How do you protect the game's tone and make sure everyone's having a good time without making one player feel like they're being punished just for trying to have fun their way?
Okay, so here's a 4-step framework. And think of this as a collaborative toolkit, not a rulebook. First, you talk about tone as a spectrum. It's not just silly or serious. Maybe it's like 80% grim with these little moments of dark humor. Be specific. Second, protect the big spotlight moments. You all agree that when one player is having a huge emotional scene, that's a no-joke zone. Third, and we're going to dig into this one, is you integrate the character emotionally. And fourth, as the DM, you have to use clear tone signals at the table to guide the mood.
Let's really zoom in on that third step, because this is where the magic happens, integrating the character emotionally. Instead of fighting against the joke character, you anchor them to the world. So that talking goose bard, don't just give them some backstory about a family, put that family in real danger. When the main villain threatens their goslings, I guarantee you the funny honking stops and that player is suddenly invested. That slapstick goblin, maybe an NPC shows them a moment of real, unexpected kindness, and for a split second the clowning stops and we see the vulnerable person underneath. It's all about finding that character's heart and tying it directly to the stakes of your world. And hey, a final note for all you dungeon masters out there. Never, ever underestimate your own power here.
Your tone is contagious. When you slow down your voice, when you describe what the air smells like, when you pause for just a second before a big reveal, you are sending a massive signal to your players that says, hey, pay attention, this matters.
Now, fixing a problem is great. We love fixing problems, but you know what's even better? Preventing the problem from ever happening in the first place. So let's talk about the single best fix there is, being proactive.
Turns out, the vast majority of gaming tables that never have these tone issues, they all do one simple, incredibly powerful thing.
And here it is. This is the whole secret. They just talk about expectations before the game even starts. And I really want to hammer this point home. We're not talking about rules here. We're not talking about mechanics. We are talking about the emotional experience. What kind of story are we all excited to tell, together? When you get on the same page about that, the characters almost always fall into place naturally.
So if you are dealing with this in your game right now, the first thing you have to do is stop asking this very common but ultimately not very helpful question.
Instead, I want to leave you with this, a much more collaborative and way more effective question to bring to your group. How do we align the experience we all want? Because at the end of the day, the best games happen when everyone is on the same emotional page, even if their characters are from completely different worlds.